Hey, what's up, everyone? I am here today with a few random tins of pellets and my very cool but cheap Beeman P17. Now, as you probably know, this is not a firearm, this is actually an air pistol, which is, by the way, unloaded. But a lot of times I'll discuss air rifles and air pistols with people, and they think that airsoft BBs and pellets are all the same thing. And then I start talking to them. It's like, no, they're very different, and they can't get it through their head. They almost think like, oh, like those are toys, aren't they? And I'm like, no. So this is kind of like, I don't even want to call it like a big explanation or anything, but it's kind of like just something kind of like clear the air for people who might not be familiar with the difference. Now, I don't have any BB guns and I don't have any airsoft. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, airsoft basically shoots like plastic BBs, just little round balls. They're made of plastic. They're extremely light and they don't have too much power behind them. And because they are so light and they're not going to travel with a lot of velocity, plus they don't have a lot of air traveling behind them, so if they hit you, they're probably not going to do much of anything. You might just kind of go ow like that, but nothing much. BBs are typically made of steel. I believe their weight's around like maybe 3 or 4 grains a piece, 5 grains. So they're also pretty light, and they're round balls, and they're typically shot out of rifles and handguns that are don't have a rifled barrel. So the rifled barrel will normally help with stability and help you get a little bit of speed too, but mainly with stability. But they don't have that. So again, you have a projectile that's heavier than the airsoft BB or projectile. So it's heavier, so that's good. That would help it get a little bit more power, but it doesn't really have that much power behind it. Plus, again, it's still light, and it's not rifled, so it's not stable, really. Now, a BB can hurt you. I've heard a lot of cases of BBs penetrating skin and causing some kind of bloody wounds and stuff. Um, but the thing is, they lose power very quickly, and like I said, they really don't go that far, and it's just like it's not something you would never want to hunt with a BB gun. If you shoot an animal with a BB gun, it's just abuse. That's all that is. It's just abuse. You never want to do that. I mean, it's okay. Like if basically, I think my use for a BB gun would be go in the backyard, set up tin cans or plastic bottles, and shoot them from maybe I don't know 10 or 15 feet away, and really that's about it. I think that's about all they're really good for. I mean, I guess with younger kids, it would be good to show them, safe handling techniques and like basic marksmanship, but that's really about all. And there's really not that much of a variation between, let's say, airsoft guns and BB guns. Like airsoft guns, it's a toy. BB guns, some a little more powerful than another, but even the very most powerful are not really that powerful. All right, and again, you get that metal projectile, and sometimes they'll use a spring, sometimes they'll use CO2 canisters to fire. Pellet guns, there's a really wide range of pellet guns. Now, BBs are, I believe they're almost always 177. There could be other sizes. I'm not familiar with those. I'm familiar with the 177. Pellets, you have 177, 20 caliber, 22, 25, 30/762, 357/9 millimeter, 45, and 50. And I probably left out a couple. So there's a lot of sizes of. Actually, there are some special made air guns that even are of larger caliber than 50. I've seen those. There's a guy, I think his name is Jim Quackenbush, and he makes these really insane handmade air rifles that are very powerful, and they're like kind of like shotgun caliber. They're amazing. It's something for you to check out. Really amazing. But as you can imagine, they are like handmade, so there's not too many of those around. You're not going to go in Walmart and see a Quackenbush, that's for sure. But so with air rifles, you have and air pistols, you have a very wide range of ammunition calibers. You also have a very wide range of velocities. You might have some pellet pistols that maybe shoot a few hundred feet per second, not much faster than a BB gun. Of course, the projectile's a bit heavier. Instead of being like say 4 or 5 grains, it might be a 7 grain, 177. Maybe it'll be like an 11 grain 22, but it's so it'll be more powerful because you're going to get more foot-pounds of energy due to the higher velocity and the heavier weight. But it's not definitely not something you want to use for hunting small game. That's for sure. Just good for some marksmanship and target training and stuff. At the other end, you have these air rifles that might shoot 45 and 50 caliber projectiles, and those projectiles might be 300 or 400 grains. Those are very powerful. There are some air rifles out there that you can buy at well-known air rifle specialty shops that'll shoot 7 or 8 or 900 foot-pounds of energy. One company to look into if you're interested, it's called Air Force Air Guns. They make some absolutely incredible air rifles and some air pistols, I believe. But I mean, some of their air rifles, they will shoot 7 or 800 foot-pounds of energy. You could probably, depending on the laws in your jurisdiction and whatnot, you could probably use those for like deer and whatnot if you're interested in hunting. So they're quite powerful. And the other thing is with BB guns, you're relying either on a spring or you're relying on CO2 canisters. Now, there's a little bit more of a variation with the air rifles. With some of the more inexpensive ones, you're either looking at a Springer that again has a compressed spring, which is it could be really cool. Now, after a while, the spring might kind of weaken a little bit, so you'll lose a little velocity. And other ones have like a piston technology, kind of like this one has a piston in it. So basically, you like with this gun, you would pull the top up and then close it, and by making that closing motion, you're forcing air into the piston. You pull the trigger, all that air rushes out, and it'll launch the projectile. That's how a lot of them work, especially the single shot, where you would have to have either a spring. So when you cock the gun, put the pellet in, and close it, that spring compresses. Press the button, spring knocks the that helps get the air going to knock the pellet out. Otherwise, the piston will kind of move the air, shoot the pellet. Now there are some that do use CO2 also, so that's another method. And then there are some that are that have like a piston that would, not really a piston, but a tank that would fill up. Those are called multi-pneumatic pumps, where you would basically have to pump the gun maybe like 3 to 10 times. Crossman makes such a pistol. So if you want to have lower power, maybe you're shooting like in your basement or something, you can just pump it like 3 or 4 times. If you're outside, you want to see how far you can shoot, maybe you do it 10 times. All different ways. The one that's probably the most effective, most powerful, and most expensive is the PCP air guns. PCP air guns, pretty freaking cool. Basically, they have a tank that gets filled up with compressed air, and they're like 3,000 or 4,000 psi's. I think some might be a little higher, but 3,000 to 4,000 psi's is the typical range of them. And they're set up a little differently. Sometimes they have a tank that runs right underneath the barrel. There are some other ones that have the tank near the back of the gun. The Air Force guns are like that a lot. But it's basically 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Neither one's more effective than the other. And then they have a gauge on there where it kind of has a sweet spot for you to have just the right amount of energy. So as you can imagine, if you're shooting a smaller caliber with a particular size tank, you'll get more shots because you need less air to launch that small projectile. If you're using a larger caliber, you might only get a few good shots because you're launching a heavier projectile. Now, the good thing about those is you don't have to cock the gun after every time, like say like a break barrel gun. So depending on the caliber, you might be able to get like 30 good shots off, or 40 or maybe 50 good shots off if you're shooting a smaller caliber with a larger tank. If you're shooting a larger caliber, like say a 50 caliber, you might only get 3 or 4 or 5 good shots off before you see like a degradation in the velocity and the foot-pounds of energy. There's a few ways to fill them. One of them is to use a high-pressure air pump. Now, that's not like the pump you use to fill your bicycle tires. That's not going to do anything. You need like a special pump. Those usually go like maybe $150 to like $300 or so. It can be a little backbreaking to keep pumping and pumping and pumping. The good thing is the pump is comparatively low priced, and I think it's a good way to start because you're starting at the lowest priced way of filling it, and you can take it from there. If you really love air gunning, then maybe you want to get a better method. And then if you do at some point, you still always have that air pump as a backup, like either taking it on the road with you, go to a friend's house, you go hunting, you go to, somewhere shooting in like a range type atmosphere. It's good to have. Second way to do it is like a carbon fiber tank or a scuba tank. Now they have those in like different sizes. Carbon fiber tanks are really cool. You can put those in your backpack or something, and you could probably get a lot of shots. As far as how many shots per tank, again, it depends on the size of the tank on your gun. It depends on the weight of the projectile, caliber of the projectile. But those are good to have. Problem is, they can set you back quite a bit. Now, those are coming down in price, just like the high pressure pumps have come down in price. So as the time goes on, I think you'll probably see them get cheaper. The last thing is they have special air compressors. Again, it's not the kind of air compressor you get at like Lowe's or Home Depot. So you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get a compressor and use that. It's not going to do anything for you. You have to get one of these like high pressure compressors. Those can be pricey. I've seen some of those going like over $1,000. My hope is that something like that might come down in price as PCP air guns take off and it becomes a little more affordable. So, I mean, there are so many things you can do with an air gun, and like you can go shoot, like with some air guns you can actually shoot big game, again depending on laws and the type of air gun you have. And then some of them are great if you just want to show a kid how to shoot in the backyard. I mean, there's so much you can do with them, and there's like this variety in air gunning that you don't see with airsoft, and you don't see it with BB guns. But in a lot of ways, they're pretty close to firearm power. Now, if you get a 7.62 air rifle, it's not going to be as powerful as a 7.62 firearm. An AK 7.62, you might get, say, 11 or 1,200 foot-pounds of energy out of that. You're not going to get anywhere near that out of a 30 cal. Depending on the power of the rifle, you might get like 75 to like maybe 150, 200 foot-pounds. But on the bright side, that ammunition is also a lot cheaper. And when you buy it, if like let's say you buy, regular ammunition, it has powder in it, has a primer, it has a casing, it has a bullet, plus someone had to assemble it. You have all these components, and as we've seen lately, things are getting better now, but there was a primer shortage. Sometimes bullets were kind of getting pulled out because manufacturers were kind of going crazy trying to keep up with demand. So if you're the type who reloaded, you couldn't find a lot of the stuff. So at least this way with just pellets, even though lead prices have gone up slightly, it's just a chunk of lead. There's no other parts. All you have to do is get lead, make a pellet, you can shoot it. And if you got the setup for it and the know-how, you can always get lead yourself and cast your own pellets. Because actually, once you start getting into the larger pellets, they actually kind of look more like bullets. I mean, you're talking about 200 and 300 and 400 grain projectiles. There's also another video I'd like to refer you to. It's I think it was by Iraq veteran 8888, and they were actually shooting 1-inch pine boards. And if I remember correctly, they had a .45 caliber Air Force rifle, and it was punching holes in a 1-inch pine board at about 400 yards. Now, granted, it's not too easy to shoot a pine board from 400 yards out of an air rifle. I'm not saying it is. Not the typical thing you'd see, but they were hitting from, think about it, 400 yards. They were hitting from over 1,200 feet, and it still had enough power to pierce a 1-inch pine board. Now, again, that's probably $1,000 to a $1,200 air gun, and you got to buy the equipment to fill it up with, and then, of course, the 45 caliber and 50 caliber pellets cost you a bit more. Again, cheaper than what you'd pay for, like, say, a 50 caliber cartridge for like a 50 Beowulf or 50 BMG or 50 A&E, but still there's some cost there. But just to show you on the extreme end what the air rifles can do. On the lower end, if you have a 17 caliber or 20 or 22 caliber, you can still go to Walmart and you can get like these are a little fancier. These 177s, these are 10.5 grain piranhas. I think I paid let's see, there's 400 pellets in there. I think I paid $7 for these 400 pellets. It's not bad. It's like 1.7 cents a piece. Now, if I had gotten just the regular run-of-the-mill Crossman pellets, they were about $5.50 for 500. The 22s, I believe, are similar. They're very slightly more money, but not much money. So it's really likely you can walk out of a place like Walmart buying a few tins of pellets, just like practice pellets, and you're only going to be spending about 1.1 cents a piece. Well, the cheapest I've gotten 22 LR in the last year or two is about 6.5 cents a round, and that was garbage ammo, and it was 6.5 cents a round. For good 22 ammo, which I consider like mini mags, good 22 ammo, it's costing me about 13 cents a round. Stingers, I love Stingers. Those are about 15 or 16 cents a round. So you can get cheap Crossmen for slightly over a penny a round. It's not bad. It's very cost effective, and you can use it for pest control, small game hunting, practice. I mean, a lot of those skills that you're using with your air rifles, they can be brought over to your firearms training also, and they're also great aids for everyone in your family. Maybe some people don't want to shoot a firearm, but they can shoot the air rifles. It's also pretty quiet comparatively to shoot in your yard. Although, just a warning, some air rifles are extremely loud. Some air rifles are pretty darn quiet. A lot of that has to do with the speed of the pellet and kind of the inner workings. I find that PCPs tend to be quieter, and if you're shooting something like say a particular round, getting heavier rounds will keep the speed of the projectile down and the sound. Like if you have like a 17 caliber and you're shooting like Gamma alloy pellets, you might be cracking 1,300 feet per second. So you're going to get that like sonic crack. It's going to sound like you're shooting a 22. Whereas if you have like a 22 and maybe you're shooting like 14 grain pellets, it might be down to like 800. So a little something to think about. But if you are not into to pellet guns, my advice to you is go buy an inexpensive one. You can go to Walmart and pick up a decent pellet gun for like $100. Try it out. You can get the pellet gun for $100. You can buy a tin of pellets for about $5 to $6, and maybe pick up like a little steel target or something, or some paper targets and like a target stand or something. I mean, you're walking out of there for like $115, and you have targets, you have pellets, and you have your air rifle. This one right here was actually I'm gonna link this in the description because I love this pistol. This is the Beeman P17. I bought this about 3.5 years ago. Purchased it on Amazon. I think I paid about $31 for it. $32. They've gone up a little bit, but they're still reasonable. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck because it has it's only a single shot, but it has like pretty good sights on it. Nice nice fiber optic sights. At least I think they're nice. Nice fiber optic sights, and it's got a good weight behind it. It's got a very comfortable grip, so it's kind of similar to shooting a full size firearm. So if you want to do some backyard practice, I find that this is very helpful for me because I'm using something that's about the size of a full size gun, about the same weight as a full size gun, and it helps me practice like breathing control, keeping steady, sight acquisition. The only thing that's not good for, of course, is there's like almost no recoil out of this, and you can't do follow-up shots because it's a single shot. So that's the only bad thing. But there's a few things for you to think about when it comes to air guns and air rifles and basically how cool they are. The other thing is, for those of you who are prepper minded, this is something you need to have. Like, I think it's a nice thing to have if you're into firearms. I think if you're into prepping, you need to have it because this is something where you can buy thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds. They'll fit in a little box, It'll be really cheap for you, very light to move around if need be, and like I said, you could hunt small game with them, and keep steady practicing and whatnot. So, like I said, if you're a firearms enthusiast, I think it's a should-have. If you're kind of into prepping and stuff, it's a must-have. So I'll leave you with that thought for today. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it, and also hit the like button if you liked it. Talk to you later.